Good evening and welcome everybody to Navigating the CPA Exam event. I am Amanda Sayed-Lam. I am the Program Manager for the Accounting and Finance programs. We have a wonderful panel with us tonight. And I'm going to start by introducing our moderator, Amber. So tonight our moderator is Amber Setter. She is the Chief Enlightenment Officer for Conscious Public Accountants, whose mission is to guide accountants back to their wholeness. The firm teaches accountants how to grow their career without losing their soul. Amber holds a Master in Leadership Studies from the University of San Diego and a Bachelor's in Business Administration Accounting from San Jose State University. She is a graduate of Accomplishment Coaching, an ICF accredited coaches training program, and also completed their Advanced Leadership program as a mentor coach. Amber is an inactive CPA and an ICF professional certified coach. Amber was recognized by Cal CPA as a woman to watch in the experienced leaders category. She is a national expert on building coaching cultures within the accounting profession. Her professional experience includes serving as an internal and external coach, facilitating and coaching within leadership development experiences, and building a nationally recognized learning and development function. So let's welcome Amber.
Well, thanks for everyone making the time. We have rich two people. All right, so why I'm sharing that is I took the very last paper exam that you actually sat in like at a fairgrounds, hunkered over for days, and then I thought, I don't want to be a CPA, I'm going to go work in people development. I put the exam on hold for 7 years, came back to it, and was taking the exam at a time where the exam was going through more significant changes like it's going through right now. So I lived through like turmoil, and I'm like, oh, well, here we are again. There's a lot of changes. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming and complicated, but I really think this event will help you shepherd you through the process. So really grateful that Amanda invited me, and grateful to be of service to all of you. So I'm going to moderate tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of my other esteemed colleagues. Going to start off with Joe Maslot. So Joe is the Associate Director at the AICPA. The AICPA is a wonderful professional association for people that are working in accounting and finance. I've done a lot with them. I really speak highly of them. So specifically, he's with the content management team with the AICPA examinations team since 2006. He has over 20 years of accounting experience and began his career at PwC. As a lead on the AICPA examinations team, he served in various roles, including staff liaison for the audit subcommittee and the business owner of the simulation development for all sections of the exam. Currently, he is the staff lead on the CPA Evolution Practice Analysis, a research project designed to document the scope of entry-level practice, as well as serve as a foundation for the exam's validity and legal defensibility. Wow, that sounds like a very big task, as is overhauling the exam. So it's awesome to have someone from the AICPA that's going to speak more about that. We also have on the panel, one second, I'm flipping here because I can't read. I don't have eyes on the back of my head, but don't tell my 8-year-old that I don't actually have that. We have Birgit Hinish, who is has a master's degree. She's also a CPA and is a summa cum laude graduate from the University of Notre Dame. She's again certified public accountant with work experience in public accounting and industry, and she's been an instructor at UC San Diego since 2009. She's also teaching Elementary Accounting 1 at UCSD Extended Studies. And last but not least, my co-host to my left is Susan Dennis. So Susan is great because she brings some practical experience in her role as managing director at Dennis and Dennis LLP. The firm specializes in the accounting and tax needs for individuals, startup, and medium-sized businesses. She holds a master's degree and is a CPA. She's also teaching accounting ethics, cost accounting, which I still have nightmares about when I took that in 2001, and fraud and forensic accounting at UC San Diego Extended Studies. So some great panelists all sharing some perspective given what they're up to in the profession. So with that being said, we want to kick it over first to Joe with talk about CPA evolution.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I'm going to talk about, the agenda here. I'll just give a high level overview of CPA evolution. I'll talk about the changes that are coming in 2024 to the CPA exam. There are some relief and benefits coming to those testing in 2023 and 2024. So I'll cover that. And there are some slides on candidate resources. So we'll get into that as well. I heard some comments coming in here on change on the exam. There's always change. There's always change in the profession, but certainly what you can rely on is that we put a lot of effort making sure that the exam is as clear and straightforward as possible. Our job is not to try to trick anyone. Our job is to try to make sure that you have the knowledge and skills necessary to protect the public interest. And with that, I think the benefits to the exam changes coming up, I think, are really strong for new professionals coming in 2024 and beyond. So next slide, please. So this change is CPA evolution, really since, if you look back to the exam, since well before all of our time, since 1917, it's really been 4 or 5 sections, and all candidates have had to go through the same 4 or 5 sections, depending on when you took it. This model with the core and discipline model, it is a lot different, and it allows really some flexibility. And it's an acknowledgement. You can see in the first bullet there, exponential growth in new rules, concepts, standards, professional standards, accounting standards, taxation, financial accounting standards. That pace of change has had to keep up with the complexities of business. And because of that, new practice is as complex as it's ever been. And to an acknowledgement of that, there are many different paths to CPA. You don't need to be an expert in everything. With that being said, someone will be assessed on what's core to being a CPA. And you can see there in the middle, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll be assessed, much like you are today, on audit, financial accounting, taxation. Technology, of course, permeates and underpins all of that. And I'll get into what exactly that means. But then to complete your exam requirement, you can pick one of our disciplines. One is aligned with tax compliance planning. One is aligned with financial accounting reporting and business, BAR, business analysis reporting. And one is really kind of the most new, information systems and controls. We'll get into what exactly that is, but it's certainly an exciting area for CPAs. And this model is an acknowledgement that there are many things a CPA can be and is, and really allows more flexibility than the current exam today. Next slide. Yeah, so our guiding principles, and this is pretty straightforward, but anything that's assessed in our core sections are knowledge and skills that are universal or common to all CPAs. So certainly the purpose of the license, the reserve service of a CPA is audit and a test. And all candidates will be assessed on that, much much like they are today. And certainly the basics of financial accounting and taxation are also in the core. And then you can see from the second bullet here, the discipline exam sections, no matter which way you go, one of the three disciplines assess knowledge and skills in that respective domain. But if you add up the core plus the discipline, the goal is to have someone who has been assessed and obviously passes to have that knowledge and skills that are needed to protect the public interest. That's what the CPA is all about, making sure that folks can protect the public interest, making sure that financial statements, making sure audits, making sure anything that a licensed professional works on is to the utmost standard. So through our research, we don't just update the exam just to update it. We try to keep it current to what clients, what technology, what the public needs. And what that is you need new CPAs to have a digital and data-driven mindset that includes the use of data analytics. I'll get into exactly what that means. That sounds scary, but you're probably doing a little or a lot of it now through your coursework. Technical accounting, technical audit knowledge, financial accounting knowledge, taxation knowledge, that's at the core of what a CPA does, but that's not all we do. So IT, cybersecurity knowledge of that's an expanding area for CPAs, providing assurance in that area. Certainly the bottom left-hand corner, critical thinking, problem solving when you're thinking about technical accounting problems, audit, financial accounting reporting, taxation. You have to be able to think critically in those areas. Certainly when you're out there in the field, understanding of business processes and controls, that's absolutely critical. You have to understand how the basics of accounting impact the business and flow through their systems. That permeates everything that an accountant, a CPA does. So I'd like to come back to this again after talking about it a little bit more. So you can see the picture on the left. We talked about that. And it is different than today. So if you took the exam right now in 2023, you have 4 sections that you take. You take audit, you take a financial accounting and reporting, you take taxation, you take BEC. You can see here in the 2024 model, there is no BEC. Where did the BEC content go? It's divided among the core and the discipline. It really didn't disappear, but it's divided among all of those sections. We got to be a little bit more judicious and creative on where we assess certain content. And again, I think this is a benefit for candidates. So some of the content that all candidates were assessed on in the past isn't necessarily the same as 2024. I'll highlight some of those areas coming up where it's a little bit more streamlined for candidates testing in 2024. What we think this model really helps is that if we had to say add or delete disciplines, you could certainly do that. The core of accounting, audit, tax is not that much different than it was in the past. The exam is changing, but so much of it relates to what you're learning today. I wouldn't be scared at all. I would really embrace this opportunity to move forward. I think it aligns probably more to what you're interested in doing and maybe allows you to take a step away from maybe content you're not so interested in pursuing or being assessed on. A lot more flexibility in this model. But one of the things I can't stress enough, no matter what path you choose, the core plus any of the 3 disciplines, it still results in 1 CPA license. So you're not a CPA dash bar, you're not a CPA dash tax compliance and planning TCP, you are just a CPA. So this model is just an acknowledgement that there are many paths to the ultimate goal, which is CPA. And that has the rights and privileges as it does today. The exam is just becoming more flexible than it has in the past and allowing kind of a little bit more choice in the assessment. So I know it's different, but there's probably more that's the same than is really different. Unless maybe you go the information systems and controls route, which is which is new, but I think it's a good step in that direction. So I'll talk about the 2024 exam. So, a lot of people, getting to CPA, the exam is certainly a big step, but it's not the only thing that makes a CPA. You certainly have to have the education. You have to have your experience. Generally, that's 1 to 2 years throughout the 55 US jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions you have to have an ethics requirement. So passing the exam does not make you a CPA. It's a huge step, but obviously it's not. There's 4 E's in there. You can see education, experience, ethics exam. And just like to drive that home, because folks think that the exam alone stands between mere mortals and being a CPA, and that's not true. So the exam is actually going to look very similar. If you've taken it already or you've taken some of our current sample tests, the look and feel is going to be very similar. No matter if you took the exam in 2023 or before, or 2024 in the future, the assessment point that we're looking to test your knowledge and skills, that's still designed for someone at the beginning of their career. We're not testing you to become, if you can become a partner at a Big Four or partner of your own firm. It is the initial step into public accounting. So it's really someone who has about the knowledge and skills of 1 to 2 years. And that's just kind of a benchmark that we have. But really one of the best times to take the exam, because it is a broad exam covering, obviously, audit, attest, financial accounting and reporting, taxation, and business principles, is when you come right out of school. You're very well rounded and broad. You have a broad base of knowledge. Once you work for a firm, likely you're going to specialize. I went into audit and I forgot all that tax stuff really quick. And I'm glad I took the exam right out of college, because otherwise, gosh, it would be really tough to go back and learn some of the tax, or vice versa. If you went into tax, having to learn the audit stuff, or you forget some of the financial accounting reporting stuff. So the exam is meant for someone at the beginning of the career. Don't let that, don't let maybe stories you tell yourself that you need to have a certain amount of experience to consume or try the exam. I think coming out of school, your best chances to really take it right away. You're probably as well-rounded as you'll ever be. There's no new education or experience requirements to sit for the exam. The new exam that's launching in 2024, it's still the same. A lot of states you can sit for the exam with 120 hours. All states you have to have 150 credit hours to be licensed. That's not changing. You still have to pass 4 sections like you do in the 2023 exam. The 2023 exam, of course, has BEC. The 2024 exam, you get rid of BEC and you have a discipline to choose. So you have more choice in the 2024 exam. Now there are the discipline exams, but in 2024, you can take the exam in any order you want. If you wanted to start with one of our discipline sections, you certainly could. There's no blocking or anything like that says you have to take the core and then the discipline. You can take them in any order that you feel comfortable. I'll get into the 18 months later on. That's something that's a little bit changing, but currently if you're testing now, you have 18 months once you pass your first section to complete the other 3 sections. That's changing up a bit, and there's some nuance to that, switching from 23 to 24. I'll cover that. You don't have, if you're a super go-getter and you say, oh, wow, Joe, I really want to pass all the disciplines. Well, sorry, you can't. Once you pass one discipline, that's the discipline that's going to be tied to your exam credit. You can't go back and pass the other 2 disciplines. And again, I can't stress this enough. It's sometimes a point of confusion. No matter what discipline you choose, what discipline you pass, that does not differentiate the license that you get. At the end of the day, you're still a CPA with rights and privileges consistent with what CPAs have always done. If there's one thing you come away with from my part of this presentation tonight, is that the CPA exam has blueprints for each section. These are the operative documents for what is assessed on the exam. So I work for the AICPA, I work for the exams team. Our job is to develop and score the exam. As part of that job, we put out the blueprints. The blueprints are everything that's assessed in every section. It has, you can see here, the content, organization, and weighting. It has the skills you'll be assessed on. It has the references, but what's most important is it has representative tasks. I'll show you what that means on the next slide. You can see here on the left-hand side, we talk about the content that you're being assessed on. And in the middle, you have skills. And then on the right-hand side, you have representative tasks. That's a plain English description of what you're assessed on the exam. So they're really important. This is a great tool. This is a free tool that's out there. If you Google CPA exam blueprints or what's assessed on the exam, you'll run into these blueprints. These are absolutely a free tool. They're not behind any paywall. They're out there for you to consume, whether you're studying with a review course or not. It's a very valuable resource, a really practical tool. If you've heard any of our webcasts in the past, if you get a remembering and understanding task statement, so you can see the check mark there, you are going to get a multiple choice question. That's a 1 in 4 option question. If you get an application check mark, you're probably going to get a multiple choice question, maybe a task-based simulation. A task-based simulation is a small case study. If there is a check mark in analysis or evaluation, you will get a task-based simulation, which is a deeper dive. It's a small case study. You generally have the chance to earn anywhere between 4 to 8 points, with air quotes there, because the exam is not straightforward graded on just points alone. There's difficulty in there underlying that, but it's a great tool to use. You can scan the blueprints. You can certainly look at them one section at a time as you go through. You can check yourself off to see where you might feel comfortable, where you might not feel comfortable, where you need to prepare more. So absolutely a free tool, absolutely a great tool. If there's one thing you will walk away from: blueprints, free, go out and see them. Audit. So if you're familiar with the audit section, it has not changed much. As I mentioned, this is the reserve service of CPAs. This is, what a CPA does. All candidates will be assessed on this, very similar to what is in the audit section now. So what you're viewing now is the 2024 blueprints. As I mentioned, you can go out and see the 2024 blueprints now. They've been out publicly available since January. You can also see how they compare to the 2023 blueprints. For audit, it's very similar. Same 4 sections. If you're thinking about an engagement that follows the course of engagement, up front, you have to consider your professional responsibilities, general principles. Of course, ethics underpins everything that a CPA does. And then you get into risk assessment and planning, performing procedures, wrapping up with reporting and conclusions. So it follows an engagement very similar to what's assessed today. Not much is changing in audit. Financial accounting and reporting, big changes going on here. You can see that if you're familiar with FAR today, FAR has 4 sections today. In the future, it's slimmed down. In 2024, it's slimmed down. The 4th area, accounting for state and local governments, will be moved to the business analysis and reporting discipline. So only if you go down the bar path, if you pick the bar discipline, will you be assessed on accounting for state and local governments. That's really the big change that's going on. So really, if you're thinking about taking FAR this year or in 2024, if you do take it in 2024, it's a slimmed down FAR section minus accounting for state and local governments. Reg is pretty much the same. Still has the same five areas. Business law has a little bit bigger presence in the new exam just because of the core and discipline model. We are able to move some of those pieces out. I'll cover later on some of the changes and some of the nuances between reg and the tax compliance and planning section. They're very closely related. And really, if you're considering tax compliance and planning, you're probably thinking about starting your career in the tax side of our world. And there are some kind of relationships between reg and TCP and financial accounting and reporting and business analysis and reporting. Audit is kind of its own thing, and information systems and controls also kind of its own thing. But basically, reg is very similar to what it is assessed today. Some minor changes, I'll go over those in a few slides. You've heard, if you've seen some of the webcasts, seen some of our communications, there is a focus on data and technology. And sometimes we get the feedback, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if what I've been taught or what I know how to do corresponds to working with data and technology. It's probably closer to what you do now than you think it is. And it has to do more with how data is structured and flows through systems and business processes, and not about using specific software. So, a really important point about the CPA exam, we don't assess any specific technology in the exam. There's not IDEA, there's not Power BI. You do have a spreadsheet tool. Currently, it's Excel. In 2024, it'll be what's called Spread.js, which looks very similar to Excel. If I didn't tell you it wasn't Excel, you probably wouldn't know it wasn't Excel. But we don't assess using software to solve accounting problems. We just don't do that in the exam. The exam is software agnostic. So it's not like you're going to have to come into the exam knowing how to do IDEA or any of the data modeling or techniques. You will need to understand how the basics of transforming data to make it useful. You will need to understand how to verify completeness and accuracy of source data. You will have to be able to use pictures, outputs of automated tools or visualizations or analytic techniques to solve accounting problems, such as, you can see the last 3 bullets here, assist in risk assessment, or to complete certain procedures, or to prepare financial statements, or to do account analyses, or to prepare portions of a tax return or supporting schedules, or to, as part of an accounting problem, identify trends, patterns, or correlations, but you won't have to use the software to do that. Bar, Susan, I'm so glad you're taking this. Usually I have to go through this myself, so.
Okay, now after all that wonderful input here you've had, you have to look at the business analysis and reporting, the bar section. So this is the separate discipline one. So you're taking the other 3, and then you're choosing not to do the other 2, not to do information systems, not to do tax, but you're choosing to do more accounting. And this is really going to be the accounting analysis. So a lot of times what you're saying is what you're going to be doing with the information. So the case study. So we're going to look at this. So as you see, the business analytic reporting, the bar, I'm going to get up here, is the uniform CPA exam, assess the knowledge and skills to demonstrate respect to the financial statement. So in the financial statement, what you're looking at is analysis. So the analysis is going to be something like what I do when we teach cost accounting, when we teach forensic accounting, when we're taking the data or the data set. The other one tells you whether the data set is good. This one is telling you what to do with it. What insights do you see from it when you have it there? And what can you do with the information? So there's a lot of different techniques. So it won't be just memorizing all your financial ratios, because it isn't going to be just on memorization. But you will look at the technical reporting. There's a lot of things you have to do for FASB and they have to do for the SEC that are different, and for like employee benefits plans. So this one will also have some of the state and local governments, since that's what's moving over there. Now that puts a lot of fear into a lot of people, but it really shouldn't. Fund accounting is something you can learn, and it's not very hard. On top of it, we really have a shortage of people who can do fund accounting. So if you have that specialty, you've got a career in front of you. So, okay, we move on to the next. Okay, and the next one, what they're showing you is gonna determine methods like to transform the data, make it useful for decision making. That's really what managerial accounting and cost accounting is. So you think if you did well in cost accounting, if you like doing the stories, you like doing that type of analysis, this might be the one you choose. You don't feel you're strong enough on the IT ones, or you think that one's too scary and you don't want to do tax, then you're probably going to be taking this discipline. Now, as I said, you will take a review course. The review course will help you with the parts you may not know, but most of the stuff you can gather through. But if you are good at cost and you're good at forensic, because forensic accounting is really the one taking a lot of this analysis. Someone else muted myself, but let me talk about this before. What I was really saying is that a lot of these methods you're looking for, if you found you were really good and you liked cost accounting, if you really liked forensic accounting, these are the type of analysis that are classes, analysis and background. While you might not have taken governmental, you can pick up fund accounting. It's not that hard in studying for it. As I said, that is a really good thing. If you want to do any kind of fund accounting for the government accounting standards, they need people. There's always a career there. You will always work and probably have a pension too. So I really do recommend to do this if you like doing those analytics. So if you're already working in corporate, you're already doing these analysis, these are probably the four that you want to choose would be this new bar. You won't want to choose the other ones unless you're doing tax. And if you're not really into the IT or it scares you. You don't want to talk about the discrete structures, you use the program. Well, the program's going to give you a lot of the data, and then you're going to have to be able to utilize it. And as I said, they're looking at a 1 to 2 year person, so they aren't looking for deep insights. So I believe you'll be able to do this one, but it will scare some people because you see that governmental. Governmental used to be in the other part and they had to take it anyway. Everyone pretty much passes it. Those aren't not the gotcha questions. So get over that fear on that. Okay, and the next one. So it shows you the percentage of weighting. The business analysis, it's 40 to 50%. Those are, you already did that in your cost accounting class. You did that in your forensic account class. You did it in some of your financial statement analysis where they made you run the ratios, they made you look at the case study. They asked you what happened to you. That's not going to be too bad. Technical accounting and reporting, as always, you got to learn the rules, you got to know the rules, but you have to learn them for the other one anyway. So in some ways, it won't be that bad. It won't be anything special or new, except for the state and local governments, but it's a small weighting. So if you learn the basics of governmental accounting, you'll probably be able to pass this one. So analysis, application, remembering and understanding. So it won't just be about, gut memorization and regurgitation on it. So if you like it, if you're doing this, if this is what you like to do, you may decide to choose this one, especially if you're not doing tax or you don't want to do the IT stuff. So I think this one's going to be very popular outside of the tax realm to take this one because you already have to study for it anyway. You may take this discipline too, just to do more coordinated study. All right, move on to the next section.
Yep. So Bridget.
Yeah, hi, thanks. No, what an honor to be able to present this new section, Information Systems Design Control. As Joe mentioned, it's a new section, but as Maria mentioned, I hope this isn't too scary. In preparing for today, this was a little bit of a new section for myself as well, so I had to do a little bit of learning and finding out what this section is about, but it seems really interesting. So if you have skills already and background in areas of data management, information systems, security, business process models, if you find these areas, pique your interest, this is probably the section for you to take. It may also be just an area where you find maybe you just have an interest, but you haven't really, learned and researched a little bit. So it's an area you may want to develop some skills and then take a section to have for the exam. So this section is two-part around information systems and controls, as the title says. The information systems, you're going to have to demonstrate areas around integrity, availability, security, confidentiality, and privacy around information systems. And in each of these areas of information systems, the exam wants you to have an awareness around the risks that are inherent in each of these areas, and the controls that organizations put in place to help mitigate these risks. So there's also some emphasis around governance, risk, and compliance. The ISC section, as the slide says, it's going to be testing your skills and knowledge around data management, and that's the full life cycle around data management. So it's data collection, storage, and usage. Something that I found really interesting, this section goes into information and IT audit and advisory services. And this is an important area that is an external audit and advisory services that, you know, accounting firms provide to clients. And a lot of organizations have to do these SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports. And so the exam will be testing your skills around those reports and the use of descriptive criteria for the SOC 2 engagements. And the SOC 2 engagements, the AICPA has 5 descriptive criteria, as the slide has on here. So you'll have to understand those areas, and it will be, they're called trust services criteria, and it's around security, which is a required criteria for the SOC 2 engagement report, availability, processing, integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. And then around SOC 1 reports, you'll deal with planning and certain procedures, but it will be excluding the testing of internal controls over financial reporting for these SOC 1 engagements. Also, what I found interesting is that this area of the exam, you'll have to be familiar with standards, regulations, and frameworks, and doing some analysis around those. So I don't know, Joe, if you have anything to add to this section from your background, or we can
I think you did great. You know, I would just, taking it up a level, you did a great job covering the details. If this is an emerging area for CPAs, so certainly everyone knows about data in the cloud. A lot of data is stored, you know, whether you think about healthcare or just think about some of the services that you use, streaming music, starting your credit card. You know, the world wants assurance that data is stored according to, known frameworks. And that's where CPAs come in. And that's an emerging area where CPAs can provide trust. And if this is an area that you're interested in, the firms are clamoring. They're very hungry for people who are interested in this. So this is a high area of growth. You can really set yourself apart. Thank you.
No, that's very helpful perspective in how it is currently in the environment. So appreciate that for the group. So that it is covering, you know, the IT infrastructure, platforms, and services. You'll hear a lot of, you know, security, cybersecurity, confidentiality, privacy, and as we mentioned, those SOC 1 and 2 engagements in this area. We can go over to the next slide, which just outlines the blueprint. Something that I thought was interesting about the blueprint in this area is currently it's areas 1 and 2, the information systems and data management, and security, confidentiality, and privacy. Those 2 sections cover roughly 70% for this. So that's a really high focus area. And those 2 sections will just have the analysis, application, and remembering and understanding, while the 3rd section will not have any analysis. So the 3rd section is going to be application, remembering, and understanding. And if you'll remember, Joe mentioned the remembering and understanding is just a lot of multiple choice. And this section is really heavily, like over 50% of the questions that you're getting is multiple choice. And I mean, that likely will probably evolve with the CPA exam as it's going to be developed. So it may be a good time, if you're interested in this section, to take this section, you know, when it comes out in 2024, because that, you know, it likely will evolve to be more analysis and away from the remembering understanding as they build certain models into the exam around this area. So.
Back to Joe.
It's very interesting how I got stuck with tax compliance and planning, because I was an auditor and I don't know how I got, anyway, happy to do this. It's really quite an interesting, evolution is the wrong word. The new content in here, it's, you know, top-down look at CPA evolution. New content is in information systems and controls, which Brigitte just covered, but also in task compliance and planning. And it really focuses on personal financial planning, which really hasn't been assessed in the exam before, but it's so natural to what a CPA does and what the general public expect a CPA to know. I'm sure if you've ever been to a family party or a get together and they hear you're an accounting student or hear you're a CPA, you get tax questions. I wish I was better at answering them. Usually I can answer the basics, and that's beyond, but certainly if you're interested in being able to answer those questions and helping clients and helping individuals, you know, tackle and plan for the future as far as personal taxation goes, this is the section for you. Now, we do some of the basics of that in the reg section, and you'll be assessed in that. And you remember, you think back to the reg slide that I presented, the 5 areas that are still there. You know, you get into the basics, and this is the reg section that will be assessed. You get into basics of taxation and your responsibility as a tax preparer, business laws in there, and then you get, you know, in the core section, you'll be assessed on federal taxation of you know, individual taxation, property, business. But here it kind of goes to the next level. So you can see here that you'll have to do tax compliance for individuals and entities, really focusing on what's beyond just the basics. And that includes tax planning for individuals and entities, and also includes personal financial planning. So really, very simply, that means saving for college, that means saving for retirement, that means strategizing, bunching deductions, when to take deductions. And it's really, really tied to adding value to someone who is, you know, just beyond kind of backward looking. A lot of what accountants do, and I don't backward meaning bad, but you're looking historically, and this is kind of looking forward. We do that in the bar section. There's a lot of forward looking, whether it be budgeting or projections. Same thing here when you're thinking about tax compliance and planning. It's forward looking. Data and technology concepts really come into this section as well, and you can see whether that's, you know, we'll assess whether you know the completeness and the accuracy of source data when it comes to preparing returns or supporting schedules. So that's something that I know I mentioned earlier that kind of permeates all sections, but that's always something taking the exam in the future that you'll always have to really have your head on a swivel for. Can you trust the information provided? Sufficiency of evidence is always at the top of mind for a professional. Do you have all the evidence? Do you have enough evidence? Do you have the right evidence? That really comes to play when tax planning and kind of that forward looking. So you can see here just the basics. It does, and Brigitte mentioned this, it does, you look at the sections and they do have different skill profiles, and that's driven by what's required of a new CPA, not by what we think we should structure a section. So what knowledge and skills is someone needed? In the new ISC discipline, honestly, folks need to know the basics. They need to know the basics of the trust service criteria that Brigitte mentioned. And that's just a lot of understanding. In the future that could evolve, but you can see here in the tax compliance and planning discipline, it's a little different. You're more at that application level. You're doing calculations, you're providing guidance, you're thinking about the future. And you can see that in area 1 here, which is the planning for individuals and personal financial planning. Again, thinking about house, saving for retirement, saving for your child's education, bunching deductions, strategizing how to best take, gains and losses to maximize tax effects. And that really ties to whether you're looking for entity tax compliance or planning or for individuals. And then you can see the area 4 is kind of a continuation of what's in reg, which is property transactions. And this focuses more on just disposition of assets than kind of just the basics of in property transactions. In reg, you're kind of focused on just basic depreciation, things like that, and the tax impacts of this. This is kind of how those assets move. So it's kind of that next step from routine. Routine would be in reg, non-routine would be in tax compliance. But again, if you're not interested in tax, you probably don't have to worry about this. Again, yeah, I talked about that. Next slide, we talk about some of the differences between FAR and reg. I'll give you a little taste of that, but the reg section, again, focuses on routine and recurring tasks. So computation of the basis of assets and associated depreciation, that will be in reg. Tax implications of routine transactions, such as, when, think about doing your own taxes, your receipt of wages, any impact of interest that you either receive or pay, dividends, if you have a business or business income, any pass-through income or treatment of deductions to complete or computate taxable income for individuals, tax implications of business operations or pass-through entities to owners. That's kind of like normal recurring things that happen on the tax side. Certainly cash contributions, distributions, changes in liabilities. Those are all considered routine. When you get into tax compliance and planning, you're thinking about something that's non-routine. So you have, again, the disposition of assets. So the character, amount, or recognition of gain or loss on assets, formation or liquidation of entities. You have, tax implications of foreign income generally would be in the tax compliance and planning section. That's non-routine for most people. And you can see use of losses by taxpayers to minimize tax liability. You can see how that comes into planning. So really tax compliance and planning meant for someone going down that, considering that tax route in the beginning of their career. I think we covered all this. The last part is, computation of income deductions from a trust. That would be in tax compliance and planning and not in reg. So I think I'll covered all that other stuff. Okay, I think this is still me. I'll go with it unless someone tells me.
This is your lovely moderator. I just want to maybe comment a little bit and ask you a question before we go on to this next topic. So
awesome.
I just want to sort of stop and pause and say, if you're feeling overwhelmed that you need to memorize like everything on the blueprints and all the sections and the percentages, you don't. Okay, you don't need to worry about that. What I want you to know is initial CPA licensure is a whole ecosystem. There's a lot of different people that are part of this ecosystem, and everyone is here to make it easy and understandable. And so that was a lot of detailed information, which is important and you need to know, but you kind of don't need to know all the details of it. So the perspective I want to share is sort of twofold. Like, one is I'm on a committee with the California Society of CPAs. If you guys don't know, as students, you can become a member for free. So I would encourage you to do that. But I'm on one committee that is half accounting educators and half practitioners. And I know, and I'm sure Susan will nod her head to this, that the accounting educators are going and looking at the blueprints, they're looking at the changes, and they're modifying the curriculum, and they're going to guide you along the way. So the schools are really good at making sure that whatever you're learning in the classroom is the stuff that's going to be on the CPA exam. And then inevitably, there's gonna be stuff on the exam that you don't have time to take, right? Like for me, I didn't choose the elective governmental accounting, but I took a review course, and the review course had enough meat to teach me what I needed to learn. So that's the other element, right? What you really need to do, and I would strongly encourage, is you need to have a CPA review course. You know, sometimes if you get a job where your employer is gonna pay for it, they have agreements with the review courses, you just go sign up and you get it for free. Sometimes if your employer doesn't have that, I would ask for your employer to pay for that. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about some specials for UC San Diego, but that will be there to help you know, like, okay, I really gotta study this because that's gonna be 30% of this test section, and I gotta know my stuff. So, you know, this is good to have some sense of what's on the sections, but don't let it overwhelm you or bog you down. Know that your faculty has your back. Know that the CPA review courses are gonna help you also, and they're gonna guide you along in that process of like, what do I technically need to understand to pass the exam? But my question for Joe is, historically with the old exam, there was a number floating around that was a recommendation from the AICPA that in order to pass all 4 sections, a candidate needed to study 300 to 400 hours. And that you're like, well, why 100 more hours? There's different variables, such as the length of time you've been out of school. So if you want to pass the exam right away, take it as soon as you can in connection to when you've actually taken your accounting classes, because the data says the sooner you take it, the more likely you are to pass. Because A, the materials are fresh in your brain, and B, you don't have life responsibilities. You haven't got, you know, promoted at work and have more to do, you haven't had kids, whatever. The more responsibility you have, the less time you have to study, so do it sooner than later. But Joe, for the new CPA Evolution, has the AICPA yet announced what their recommended study hours are for the various sections or the aggregate of all 4?
I don't know if that recommendation necessarily came from us. I'm not saying that it's off, but we don't typically would make a recommendation because, as you said, it's highly dependent on how prepared and how comfortable you feel with the content. So it is true. I will certainly agree that taking it as soon as possible, closest to your studies, is probably your best strategy. As I mentioned, you're probably as well-rounded as you're going to be. Certainly, you're going to most likely specialize in your career. And, you know, depending on the path you go down, you might forget the other path. If you go audit, you might forget tax and vice versa. So I certainly agree with that. It is a substantial time commitment to study. And I would second the motion that don't let all the information that I just shot at you deter you. It's more to point you to, hell, hey, remember that guy from the AICPA talked to us about the blueprints. Let me go out and look at the blueprints. Let me use that as part of how I prepare, how I use either what I was taught in school or what the review course providers prepare me. You know, just put that at the back of your head that the blueprints are out there to help you, can help you kind of gauge and modify and calibrate what you're studying.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Sure.
Can move forward with the examination administration and transition.
Sure. So this looks busy. Again, it's a plant a seed. It's not. I'm glad that reminder came in. There's certainly no test at the end of this presentation, nor do you need to remember specifics. But if you have taken a section, there is a hard cutover at, you know, the end of 23 going into 24. Starting at the bottom, if you have BEC passed, then you would not need to take a discipline. So right now, as you can imagine, there has been a rush to take BEC before the new disciplines come in. that makes a lot of sense. BEC's been a known quantity. It's been around since 2004. If you have audit, FAR, or reg passed going into 24, then you wouldn't need to take the associated course sections. Pretty straightforward. So again, if you are in the process, I don't know where you are be at in your journey, but if you think BEC is advantageous to you, you can certainly take that. But there's pros and cons to taking the exam now or in 24. If you're really passionate about one of the areas, one of the discipline areas that we covered, that's a benefit to you. You can really set yourself apart, whether that's information systems or on the tax side. I think I feel passionate that it's either way you win. It's not a lose-lose. It's a win-win. So, but the fact of the matter is, it's a new exam and there's transition. The transition's out here. You can see it's a little cut off there, but if you Google on the NASBA site, you can get to this transition rule if you're in the middle of testing. Any questions on that? I don't know. Sometimes that gets confusing. Don't see any. Thanks. Again, if you're in the process of testing, it gets a little tricky toward the end of the year. So really you have to plan, and we've had these kind of, you see like asterisks in bold here, but I'll break it down for you. If you're planning on taking BEC this year, which a lot of people do to avoid the disciplines, you have to plan. And there is implications. You can see the third bullet down. Middle of December is the last day of testing for all sections in 2023. We basically have to shut the exam down for the latter part of the year, for the last 16 days of the year. And then it'll come back up again in early 2024 to start testing, but it's basically shut down for a month. And if you are planning on testing BEC, you really have to get in there by mid-November. I don't know if that impacts anyone, but this slide's out there. If you have any questions, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I won't belabor this point because I don't know how many of this will actually impact, but you have to plan ahead if that's coming quick. We're in September right now. You can see here that score release, and you can see the dates here, and the dates are limited, and it's not like what we currently do now, where we test almost all the time and you get scores really quickly. And when I took the exam, I too took it paper and pencil in a barn somewhere and got my scores like months and months later. But when we do change the exam, we put a lot of time and effort to make sure that the scores that we report are accurate. So we do have to take certain time and care to make sure that those items that we test people on in, let's just look at the first quarter there. You can see the core test dates are from January to March, and you don't get your scores until June. That's not ideal. We know that. We're working toward building up our new items over the course of 24 to make sure that we can hopefully in 25 get back to the score release schedule that folks know and love. Hopefully we get there. Hopefully it allows us to get there. You can see the discipline test dates are very narrow. That's because not everyone obviously will be taking the same discipline. You get a choice now. So they are a little bit narrow, but hopefully in the future we get back to having the exam available most of the time for testing and scores, getting back to being reported fairly quickly. There are relief and benefits out there that NASBA and AICPA have been working on. NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. They represent the interests of the 55 boards of accountancy throughout the licensing districts of the United States. But one of the benefits that if you are testing and you bring credit, remember, think back to that slide a few slides ago where you take credit from 23 and 24. So if you have BEC passed, say you passed BEC 6 months ago, doesn't matter. January 1st, 2024, you get an 18-month extension on that. So it's a huge benefit for those taking the exam now. You might be thinking of it, well, hey, I'm not going to take the exam till 24. Where does that leave me? Well, there's some benefits coming, hopefully. I'll get into that in a bit. The credit extension that I just mentioned, the 18-month bonus for anyone bringing credit from 23 to 24, that has been green-lighted by all 55 jurisdictions here. So that's really good news. Now, remember back when I was covering the 4 E's, the 3 E's. Right now, if you're taking the exam, once you pass a section, you have 18 months to knock out the rest of the sections. Otherwise, your credit starts expiring. Now, if you're testing in 24, that applies to you, but NASBA put out a paper. They're trying to change that to 30 months. So instead of having 18 months to pass your sections, they're working on, and then each state determines how they want to license folks. You can see here that the 30-month rule is implemented, I think, only by Puerto Rico. Is that it on this map? Yeah. And they have, the states in yellow have voted to go to 30 months. So California there, no vote yet, still 18 months. Hopefully that gets moved forward. Certainly it's of interest for you if you're testing in 24. Hopefully you get the 30 months, and hopefully that's implemented when you are testing, but it's something that's going on right now. It's something that it was kind of an arbitrary, the 18 months goes back to 2024 when we shifted from paper and pencil to computerization, and something that's a little bit archaic, and hopefully more time allows folks the time they need to pass the exam. But hopefully in 24, this all becomes green like the prior map, where folks testing in 24 have 30 months or more, depending on jurisdiction, to pass the exam. So more to come on that. Candidate resources.
Yeah, back to Amber.
Thank you. I was up here chatting and asking for clarification and just commenting on it, because I think it's really great. I mean, these changes from 18 months to 30 months to sort of resetting the clock are all really positive, significant changes. And so I just really am thrilled to see it. And, you know, one of the things that's terrible that we do as CPAs is we love to talk about how hard it was when we did the exam. Like, I've got my car and
Yeah.
feet to move the car and get there like Fred Flintstone. But legitimately, the last time they were going through this overhaul, scores were being delayed because they're trying to understand the new exam and scoring. And I was caught in this time where there was no score release timeline. And so we were just like sitting out there for 2-3 months. And so I think that the stakeholders really were thoughtful of like, hey, we know this change is important, you know, it is a gift. And instead of doing all 4 exams, you get to choose kind of your elective. Like, that's really cool. That's a very positive change. But it's going to be bumpy to get there, but we're going to help you and we're going to make some shifts. So this is all like really great stuff and has been years in the making. So it's kind of fun to see it all come alive. So I'm going to kind of wind us down. We're going to talk first about what are some resources available to you. So the AICPA has a really, and for your whole career, the AICPA is going to be a resource to you as well as your state society. But particular to the CPA exam, they've got a toolkit. They, by the way, have toolkits for many things. It's really cool. Like, you're going to be a practitioner, you can go, where's the toolkit for, you know, I'm working in tax. But with the CPA exam, you can go to this website and really get some helpful resources specific to helping you with the CPA exam. And again, it's tool-based. It's like things that will help you and plan. So it's also going to probably have some great information and summarize some of these things for you. Or as changes continue to unfold, right? As maybe we can get all of the jurisdictions to go to 30 months, they're gonna clarify that, this is me manifesting hopefully a new reality. Next slide, please. There's also a lot of scholarship money out there, right? So there's different foundations, there's CPA exam scholarship to help you with the fees for taking the exam. So just so you know, when you go to take the exam, I don't know what the fees are gonna be, maybe Joe knows, but they're roughly about $200 a piece now. Joe, do you know what the prices will be?
He's nodding his head yes.
Okay, so they'll be $200
Yeah.
each. So depending again on your employer, some employers are like, we'll pay it right away. Some are like, we'll pay for 4, if you fail it, we're not gonna pay for you to fail. So you might need some financial support and it's offered to you. There's some scholarships for people pursuing their PhDs in accounting. I know I thought about that. I love to teach. I was like, would I want to do that? But then I read some of the dissertation titles, like about, the impact of going from LIFO to FIFO in the corn industry. And I decided to go to master's in leadership. But if you really wanted to do that and be an accounting professor, there's lots of money available. And I think you could probably actually do a dissertation on something more interesting than the corn, but I didn't do enough research at that time. There's also some for minority students. So the AICPA, I know, has some fantastic programs for specifically ethnic minorities with 2 to 3 years of work experience. I've actually spoken in that, but in this one, they have an interactive all expense event, or maybe, that talks about that. That's probably the one that I've spoken in. Sorry, I'm getting confused up here, but it's great. There's just like so many resources to help you is the point of this. And then another accounting doctoral scholars program that really helps with the pipeline issue with faculty members, right? Helping people that have recent experience in the practice of audit or tax that can go and teach in the classroom. So good to know, free money is good money, and there's a lot of support. Next slide.
And just so I can
Oh,
jump in real
please.
quick, the first one also covers a prep review course too.
Great, yeah, so you want that CPA review course for sure. I would recommend that. Thank you. This is another platform that's sponsored by the AICPA. It's called This Way to CPA. So it's broader than the CPA exam, but it guides you through things about education, work experience, licensure, maybe why you want to become a CPA. I will hands down say, for me, becoming a CPA has been an amazing experience. And I went into it not because I already knew I didn't want to work in accounting anymore, but like I wanted to have a seat at the table to shape accounting education and CPA exam. And now just in my life, when I tell people I'm a CPA, which I don't do often, but I've had circumstances in life, like as an example, I'm the responsible person in my family, and so I'm the executor of everyone's estate, and like I can get in the battle of battling the ideas of like how do we set this up and how do we structure it, and then I'm getting professional discounts from the attorneys. So like really becoming a CPA, I would say it's a great career choice, but that particular platform can give you some more resources. Also talks more about scholarships and then different student webinars that they have. So there's some great services that are available to you, just things that are going to help you at the onset of your career. This is in particular to a review course. So this one is for UWorld, formerly Rogers CPA Review. Before I dive into UWorld, just want to say there's different types of CPA review courses. And what I encourage you to do is find the one that really works for your learning style. Like for me, when I was doing the review course, I really liked Roger because he would get on the whiteboard and he would draw out T accounts, and I could I learned by seeing it done. Whereas Becker, they just really talked through the materials. But when it came to like financial, which is basically taking your intermediates again, like I needed someone to talk me through a really detailed textbook. So I used Becker for financial and I used Roger for the others. So really just kind of maybe if you can see what they look like, if you can watch the presenters online, they're on YouTube and stuff, and just, or the social media, get a feel for them, because you're going to be spending like 300 to 400 hours with these people virtually, like you want to have a fit. But with UWorld, they have a test prep that they, specific to the school here, with UCSD Extended Studies, that they have a partner until you pass all 4 sections guaranteed. So that means you're going to get access to their online study information, their video instruction, their multiple choice test bank, as well as their task-based simulation, and some digital flashcards. So that's really good. And you want to think about that with whatever review course that you choose, because sometimes they cut down the access. It's like, no, you only get a certain amount of time. And you're like, well, I got one more section, you know, and then you have to pay more money. So you want to think about, you know, this is an awesome offering, but if you did something else, what's your access and availability with it?
And also for UWorld, all the new content is gonna be there at the end of the year. They'll have that ready.
Yeah, and I've also heard along these lines, thanks for pointing that out, right? Because the exam's changing, so then all the review course providers have to change. So they might be shipping you, like, instead of all 4 books at one time, 1 book at a time. 1 book at a time. And I would ask for that just in case, like, they make updates because they're like, oh, we didn't get this right in the first version when we did this new exam. Like, if you can get your materials 1 section at a time as you're going through it, or 2 at a time, it might make sure that you have the freshest, best version of the materials, because it's all new, right? We make typos and grammatical errors. All right, so I'm gonna end the conversation now, really just talking about, you know, how do you make a plan? Because there's a lot of stuff that you need to do, but what our coaching firm does is we help people actually come up with a realistic schedule and stay accountable for the study plan throughout the process. So what I want to first share is just some information, right, about what gets in the way. So there was an Illinois State Society did a study, and they studied, well, what are the things that get in the way? Why? They called it decoding the decline, which is we have a decline in the number of people taking the CPA exam and passing the exam. And why is it? What are some of the factors? So the number 1 thing that they found, the greatest barrier to becoming a CPA, was a workload time commitment. So 63% of the people who started the process that didn't complete it said they didn't have enough time, right? Work was consuming so much of their capacity that they didn't have enough time to study. Because when you're studying and working, realistically, you're looking at like studying 15 to 20 hours a week. When we're taking people through a program and they're working, you got a part-time job studying. So you're getting up in the morning and studying before work, you're working and you're studying at night. And life's not fun, but it's not forever. The next one is this notable challenge of fear of failure, right? Like it's known to be a really hard exam. And so people sometimes just that they get in their head about it, right? So a lot of the work that we do as coaches is whether I'm coaching somebody to pass a CPA exam or being the managing partner at the firm, it's on their mindset and their fears and like just getting them grounded and kind of breaking through all that. So you want to think about, well, what are the stories I'm making up? It's going to be really hard. I can't do it, whatever. And then you get to the exam center and you have test taking anxiety, right? Or what I see a lot of times is people fail 1 exam and they've never failed anything in their life. They're like, oh, I can't do this exam because they don't know how to fail. It's like, well, don't worry. Like 90% of people fail at least 1 section. I don't know. Maybe the data is different now. NASDA used to put out these candidate performance handbooks. They don't do it anymore, but they would say like, out of what percentage actually did all 4 on the first attempt? It's really a low percent. I could say with certainty, it's less than 20%. So you might fail, and that's okay. And then finally, lack of employer support. So what I've been in the industry for 20 years now, and what the firms are providing today, most of them is the same thing that they gave me when I got my offer letter and for a starting salary in 2003. They're giving a CPA review course and a bonus for passing the exam, and the bonus is connected to how soon you pass the exam in correlation to your start date, which is going to be real interesting with all these score delays that we're talking about. But Some are now doing things differently, like our program is all about emotional support and accountability, but it's hard when you're working sometimes in an environment that right now is severely understaffed and has a lot of compliance deadlines. And the senior people are like, well, I did the paper exam, so I don't know why you can't just reschedule it at a time that works for the work schedule. And they don't understand the nuances and complexity of like, well, now the disciplines were only offered for 1 month out of a quarter. So that's I think some of the rub where the employers just don't really know what today's reality of taking the exam is. And so it shows up as lack of support. So what I want to, the wisdom I want to impart with you is really how you create a realistic study schedule. Okay. And we have a question. Yeah. You can ask a question now. Hold on, we're gonna get you a mic.
Thank you. You go to the previous slide. I was very curious about the lack of employer support. You mentioned earlier that employers were supporting people taking these exams, and it's probably not so why there's a disconnect here. Is that why?
I think the disconnect is the employers are trying to offer support in terms of here's a little money in a review course and go do the exam. But where the gap is protecting someone's boundaries in time while they're in the process, especially if someone's in public accounting. Because when you're working in a firm environment, you're in matrix reporting, which means I don't just report to Amanda who knows what's going on in my life. I'm reporting to 4 Amandas, and they don't have the larger scope of like, we'll have an exam. And so they're like, well, I need you to finish this job. You're like, well, I got an exam. Well, but it's a computer, you could just reschedule it. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way. Like the testing center's overbooked right now. Everyone wants to pass BEC and I've got to get my paperwork in. Like that's the lack of support is just not. And I understand from the partner perspective, like, this is a lot of detail, right? So it's not a diss on them. I just think that's kind of where it shows up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that it clarifies, and it's very important to talk about that thing.
Yeah.
It's mainly that they were understaffed. So if you are actually competent, they will overload you.
Yeah.
And then if we have overloaded people that burn out and then they didn't pass their exams,
It's a
then they
vicious
don't
cycle.
become a CPA.
Yeah.
And that person that may not have been as competent had enough time to pass the exam.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's what you have to be very careful in some of these firms. The more
Asking for
competent you
more
are,
work, right?
The more work, you get enough work to break your back. Yeah, so you gotta be very careful to stand up and get it.
So, but that's kind of the work that we help people through, so we can kind of talk more about it. So when you want to create what is, I say, a realistic study schedule, you know, just imagine you're choosing to take a section and you're like, okay, I'm going to aim, and I'm going to look it up, Joe. I believe you that it maybe doesn't exist, but we advise people just pick, say like a number. I'm going to aim to study 100 hours to pass audit. And the reason that we do that is because I would ask people, they're like, well, I got a 74. And I'm like, great, how much you studied? A lot or a little? It's like, well, I can't measure a lot or a little. You need to start to know like how many hours you need to put in. And then what I would notice is people always plan for the best, right? They don't plan for, they're working on an engagement that gets postponed or goes over. They don't plan for, they catch COVID or whatever, and they get sick, and they like, you can't, when you're sick, you can't study and focus. So your realistic schedule is not planning for the best. You're going to plan some like extra cushion time in there. You want to build in periods for renewal, right? So the human brain is not designed to be like a computer on all the time until you have so many applications it crashes, right? You want to have maybe days that you take off. So when I did the exam, first I thought like, oh, on Saturdays, I'm going to study for 8 hours, and Sundays I'm going to take off. Well, it turned out that after studying for like 4 or 5 hours, it was like diminishing returns. Like I didn't get anything out of it. So I had to change that to like 4 hours each day. And Monday through Friday, I would just say I get one night off. I don't know what night it's gonna be. Maybe it's Monday, I wanna go to yoga. Maybe Wednesday, I get invited to dinner. Like, I'll study 4 days out of the work week, but one day I'm gonna take off. So you wanna have that time in there for you. And then you wanna just refine it as you go, right? Like I learned, oh, I can't do 8 hours on a Saturday, like hours 7 and 8 are garbage, right? That didn't work, right? So I had to refine my plan. And then you really want to keep in mind the scoring delays because they're going to be part of it. And that might keep you in a hold pattern. So you're like, well, I took something, but now I'm waiting 8 weeks to find out if I pass. Should I do I take something new? Do I not? Like you'll want to think about that. The next slide. This was the one I replaced, so maybe it's the next one.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I think it
didn't get.
it didn't.
That's okay. So one of the bits that I'll speak to, and this was earlier in the deck, and all of this stuff is changing so much that I was like, oh, Amanda, I didn't understand this. Like, we need to update my slide. So that's what we were looking at there. Is I want to speak specifically to the discipline. And if you guys go follow me on LinkedIn, Amber Sutter, I gave a pretty clear example of this today. So the disciplines, again, are only going to be offered for 1 month out of a quarter. And depending on what you work in, that month might be wildly unrealistic. So the perspective I shared on LinkedIn today was if you're a tax staff person, what happens during tax is you have 2 big deadlines, April 15th and October 15th. Well, the discipline timing is something like you can take an exam April 20th to May 19th. Well, after busy season, after April 15th, your brain's going to be fried. You know, that's 4 weeks to study. And I always tell people, like, after busy season, take a week off, don't study, like veg out, hang out. You just need to give your brain a break. So I would say that is off the cards. And then the other discipline timing that they're giving you is October 1 through the 30th. If you're a tax person, hands down, no way. That one doesn't even count. So really, you only have 2 months out of that calendar year to do that. So that's some feedback, Joe. I love the AICPA, but that's the reality that, like, for this year, it's really slim. So if you're going to be brand new to it in like 2024, you might say, okay, what should I do with discipline? And then you really need to talk with your employer about what's realistic. Because I had a role in a firm once where we put in the employee handbook, we basically told people, do not take exam sections during this time. Like, it's not good for you. It's not that we don't want you to pass. We want you to succeed. And so what we're telling you is, like, don't think you're going to take an exam on April 1st when you're working in the tax department, because you're setting yourself up for failure. All right, so this is just a testimonial, you know, really the value of creating a plan and executing. But this person said, I'm still in absolute shock, but I passed financial, which is usually the biggest and hardest one for people in today's current exam environment, and audit. And they just found out I've also passed my most recent exam, BEC. Like they're like, I can't get my head around it. Like, I really learned how to make a good plan to refine my plan. And I'm giving you guys all this wisdom for free. But like, that really, the devil in the details of the CPA exam is kind of like the plan. You gotta like get a plan and stick with a plan. Just like if you wanted to lose 20 pounds, you gotta have a plan, and you gotta have like a trainer, and you gotta stay accountable for it in order to create the result that you want. All right. The next piece that I think is so critical for people is understanding why you want to become a CPA. So when I first started professional coaching to help people pass the CPA exam, I distinctly remember a particular coaching session that has gone on, you know, in my mind for a long time because it always comes up. And I asked this person, why are you taking the exam? Oh, my parents think I should become a CPA. Okay, why are you, can I ask the same question? Why are you taking the exam? Because I needed to get promoted in the firm. Why are you taking the exam? And it was like silence. The person had not yet thought about what that designation was going to make possible for their life, right? So yeah, it's great if you get parental approval or society approves. It's great if you get promoted, but like when you get promoted, what does that mean? What are you going to be able to do when you have that credential that you're not able to do otherwise, right? Like, what is in it for you? And I remember sitting down at the Thomas Jefferson School of Law library, because I lived downtown and I would go full away there, and going through the multiple choice simulations and getting like a 65% and feeling like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. And I would just lay my head down and like imagine, like, if I'm a CPA and I can be on this committee, and then I can influence what classes count towards the 150-hour rule. And I would just imagine all the reasons why I wanted to do it, what was really in it for me. And I would advise you all to do the same, because yes, it's a respected career. Yes, it can be lucrative. Yes, you work with super smart people that want to make a difference in the world. Like, all those things are awesome, but dig deeper into your own why. And that will get you through the challenging times that probably are going to come. All right. So why the why matters. I thought I would share some more results with you. So we had a candidate who had she had failed 5 sections consecutively. So you'll see that before coaching, audit, financial, BEC, fail, 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 fail. She was working for a firm that was very supportive. She really liked them. They were accommodating her work schedule. And she came into coaching and she's like, I just needed to cry and let it out. I didn't want the firm to know. I felt like I was disappointing them, like all the feelings that come with failure and I'm not good enough. And after just 8 weeks of professional coaching, she passed all 4, went 4 for 4. And her testimonial was, it helped me figure out why I was doing it for me and not because I just had to for my job. So the power of your why is incredibly helpful. All right. The last part that I want to speak about is managing your anxiety. So we have an 8-week program, by the way. We take people through different sections. And managing anxiety didn't exist in the curriculum until COVID happened. And, basically there was a lot of mental health issues coming up in the world and in accounting, because that's when accounting just really, people left the profession and there's a lot of work and not enough people to do it. So anxiety went up. So, I'll just share with you a little bit that. And even for me before COVID, I didn't understand enough about anxiety, but what I saw in my coaching practice is I actually went to the AICPA, love the AICPA, and I was like, we're on the verge of a mental health crisis. Like, we need to talk about mental health. And so I was able to do that, and it's been great. It's been very rewarding, but anxiety is something that we think like we're in our head. We think we're in our head, but actually anxiety is how our body responds to a fear inside of our mind. So there's this awesome Netflix show called The Mind Explained. And there's this particular episode just about anxiety. And this guy's talking about how panic attacks happen. It's like, and this person's like, oh, I got to sit in traffic. Oh, I got to pay my 30-year mortgage. Oh, the April 15th deadline. And I'm like, oh, these are all the things that like accountants are hearing about. So your clients are coming in stressed out, like you're feeling stressed out. And when you have a fear inside of your mind, like, I'm never going to pass this exam. I'm not going to get promoted. They're going to realize how stupid I am and they're going to fire me because that imposter syndrome comes up. Then your body is basically imagining that you're like a warthog and a lion is coming to chase after you. And your body just gets all tense. So we help you to learn about that so that when you go to the testing center, that you can do some breath work. You go to a multiple choice question. I have no idea. I've never seen this before. Either your anxiety can spiral out or you can do some quick breathing techniques. We're also really going to hit home on this with the testing windows, the delayed test scores. It's like, you're gonna have anxiety waiting 3 months for your test score. I already know, right? So learn how to manage your anxiety, like watch some YouTube videos, learn some breathing exercises. It will be wildly helpful, not just on the CPA exam and not just in your accounting career, but in your whole life. Find your breath. It's amazing. All right.
So I'm gonna skip to just the Q&A because we're at time, and that way we can give a chance to everybody to ask questions.
All right.
Maria, do we have any questions in the chat right now?
Well, the one comment I'd like to make
Sure.
is that the most common question I get in class is which section to take first. And that's going to be the same thing here. Which section do I take first? Do I take a discipline section? Which one fits in? The discipline sections are only certain times. Which one should I take? And I usually say, go back to which section did you like the most and which one did you like the least? Because if you're going to start, if it stays at 18 months, it doesn't go to 30. I think it will go to 30. But if you want to start the clock, it's based on what you pass. So sometimes you may want to start with what you like the least, because then if you pass that, it starts the clock. On the other hand, you have the learning curve. The other opposite side of the learning curve is the forgetting curve, which is why people coming out of school tend to do better on especially things like FAR. So if you're going to take the financial one, and then maybe you're going to pick the bar section, then you may want to do that, study that one, and study for the discipline at the same time, simply because they're all going to go together. So really, it comes down to you on what you're going to do. I also wanted to mention, if you do have family emergencies, even with the 18 months, it's not 18 months. So if somebody gets pregnant, you do not have to take at 9 months that last test or start again. They will give you more time. So if you did get COVID, they would give you more time. So they actually, that's the great thing about Cal Society and all of the different boards, is these are not set in stone if life events happen. Now, don't plan for that. It is better to do it also on all the review courses. When you're taking the tests on the review course, you do the study and when you're taking the test, it will comes up saying you are consistently passing this. You are ready for it, and then you go schedule. So all of them have these things built in. So it isn't as scary as it sounds. These are things you've already learned in class. If you can make it through intermediate, you can pass the exams. You don't have to know everything, you have to know a lot of it. And so if you can get through this, it shouldn't be as big a barrier as it's been set up to be. And I actually think splitting out in disciplines is going to be great, because a lot of tax people, that's going to be what they're doing anyway. It's going to coordinate better. If you are in financial, or that's what you like the best, it's going to coordinate better. I'm not sure how the new one's going to come in for the internal controls and all of the rest of the controls for the stuff, because we haven't seen that. So, but the people coming from a cross discipline, an engineer or computer science, they might like that one better. But remember, still, they may ask the question like an accountant instead of like a computer science. So it still could be hard. And I know they think they write it in plain English. The rest of us do not believe that's true. So anyway, so any other questions on it?
Yeah, I like this idea of 300 or
Wait for the microphone.
I like this idea of 300 to 400 hours for studying. I'm just wondering if you have any tips on how to allocate that time. I mean, I'm like, just off when I think about it, I think like, oh, maybe if I did like 2 hours a day for a couple months or something. I guess it's different for everybody, but I mean, if you could give some tips on it.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So what I would suspect is the review course will have that. They will have like a recommended of like, this is how much time it's going to take you to get through this module or whatever. And it's been a while since I've been in one of those platforms, but like they used to have like a generator where like, here's today. It was not that sophisticated, but like here's today, and here's the day when I want to take the exam, and it's like spits out like how many hours you should study, like simple math. That doesn't get to the realistic part. But to bottom line it, I would just see what the review course recommends and then work it backwards. I do not advise starting to study 2 hours a day here and there, because I might take it in 3 months. Because what happens is you're going to forget what you studied in week 1 and week 2. Same thing with ordering your review course materials. People are like, oh, I'm gonna order my materials and I'm gonna start studying in 6 months. And I'm like, well, they're aging. Like, it's not like fine wine. It's kind of gross. Like, they're not gonna be as fresh. So don't order your review course materials until you're really like, okay, I'm really ready to actually start studying. And then when you're starting to study, I think at a minimum, you want to put in like 15 to 20 hours a week, because then it's like, okay, if I'm targeting like 100 hours, it's 5 weeks and things are relatively fresh. I'm building momentum and building that cadence. It's like, I used to run marathons. You just train for it and then you do the race and then you take a break and you can take your time. But just constantly like a bit by bit by bit, you're for sure going to forget what you needed to know like months prior.
I would say you can't do 15 hours a week. It's gonna be very hard to get out. A little bit at a time might not be able to do it in 2 hours at a time. You may need chunks to go through to actually get through modules and sections. So whether you can take mornings or afternoons, or you have time set aside and not marathon necessarily weekends. But you also have to put your work so they understand, because what part of your brain you're using to learn this is the part of the brain you're using at work. And if you overtax, it's just gonna make it hard, which is why you see 63% with no support at work aren't finishing. And they can't finish within the time frame because you just really run into the wall, mentally or into a wall, can't get through it. But that's why I said, if you can get at least minimum of probably 15 hours.
But this is something like, that's kind of with I echo a lot of that, but there's, you're gonna have gaps from work, right? You're like Thanksgiving, prime time to like have a lot of time to like chill and get in some good days of studying, because there's days off at work. And so you just want to kind of take that step back. And this is where if you've been in your role and you kind of understand the ebbs and flows, it's awesome, because you're like, okay, I know when it calms down and I know when it's busier. But if you're newer to a role, you're really going to want to ask like a supervisor or manager, like, hey, what's it going to be like? Like, give it to me straight, like I signed the deal, I'm here. You don't have to like promise me, but tell me the truth, because I really want to get through this exam and I want to plan accordingly. And people will mentor you, they want you to pass as well. So,
well, and the other thing is it's good to get a buddy. That was the thing about Becker and for a lot of the other different ones, or people at work, is to buddy up with someone else and do a study. So you guys can go off into another room and study for 4 hours together. It really does help. You really mirror other people when you're doing it. So it does help.
Okay, Maria?
All right, I have 2 questions in the chats. The first one is, does UCSD have help to check if education requirements have been satisfied?
So yes, so if you need your requirements to be checked, I am happy to give you my opinion on your requirements. You can send me your transcripts. I will send you a self-assessment and I can schedule an appointment with you to review them.
And then the second question is, getting the test scores for 2024 seems to be fairly long. Any suggestions how to study while waiting?
can you pull that slide up?
Yeah. What I would say is, let's say you're going to pick FAR, the financial, and you want the discipline. What I may do is I might say, study to take that one, and then study to take that discipline that coordinate together. Because then when you're waiting for the things to come through, you've at least taken 2. It's the old thing of, I had to take it all paper. So we were studying for paper, you didn't get to punch in and see when it was. So we can only take it 2 times a year, and you had to wait quite a few months to know whether you passed or not. And then you'd have to take it again. So then you have to start studying again. So we're just in that uncertainty like it used to be. So you may want to take more. That's why a lot of people they didn't always pass, but they would take all 4 because they didn't know what they would pass. And you had to pass at that time too, in order for it to count. So here you don't have to do that. You only pass 1 at a time, but you may want to consider taking it with the discipline if you need to, or you feel you need to go fast. You may want to do it that way, or pick something that, or just get ready for the next section. That's what a lot of people have done before. They take one and then get ready for the next section.
I would kind of just add a little bit that's important, and I asked Amanda to bring this slide back up, because this is all brand new. So it used to be there was a score release timeline for all sections. So when you look at this, you really need to understand that there's different times that you can take the exam and different times when scores are going to come out based on if you're taking a core section or a discipline section, right? That's a really important nuance here. And then the next thing you need to do is understand what your workload is going to be like when you're going to try and take the discipline test. So that's what I was talking about my LinkedIn post earlier. If you're a tax practitioner, you're probably not going to take a discipline in Q2 of 24 because you're going to be exhausted on April 20th and you probably deserve a week off. And then I don't know if 3.5 weeks is enough to try and jam it in there by May 19th. So it might not be realistic. And I can tell you for sure, October 1 through the 31st, it's not realistic for a tax person. So that impacts it, right? You kind of have to think of this like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. If we just look at core test dates, so imagine you want to get going and you want to take something in January 10th, you're like, well, I'm not going to get my score until June 4th. That's a long wait. Well, maybe you're like, okay, cool, I'll take it March 26th, and then my wait will be short up. Well, guess what's going to happen? Those first 3 weeks in March, the testing centers are going to be filled to the gills because everyone else is going to want to not have to wait 6 months for their exam score. So that's where planning is going to be so critical in 2024 in ways that it's been a little more loose before. You're like, oh, I think I'm going to take it around this date. When I feel good, I'll schedule it. It's like, no, I would advise you to really schedule it and stick with it because of this complexity of wait times. And I know it won't be like this forever, but I know it needs to be this way, but the thing is you have this information and you can use this information to your advantage if you really understand, like there's core tests, there's discipline, and how do I work it backwards?
But if you're tax, you may want to take it January 10th and then take the other one and you study them together and take like the other tax discipline right after, even the next week, if you're coordinating study. So it all just depends on what you've chosen to do. Because then you have to wait, but you would at least, you could study for the next ones in the next section.
Yeah, and then you breathe for 6 months while you wait for your score to come up. That used to happen.
So
You're just like,
so eventually, hopefully by 25, as Joe said, the scores will come faster. But if you really want to get it done in the next year, you just have to realize it's going to take some time. Any other questions in that?
No other question in the chat for now.
Okay. The one thing you would have to, for the people who thought they needed to be evaluated for 150 hours, the thing I would put in there is we have a lot of extra classes you can take. You can take the forensic accounting class that really does help you with FAR and it helps you with audit. It's much more fun because we don't have to teach all the odd stuff. And which is pretty boring. Sorry, it's just difficult. But the thing is that but sometimes people go through all of the different ones and they end up half a credit short. Maybe it's because of the way they count something from the community college class or a different one at a different time. They used to have different numbers of credits. So I always tell people to make sure you're over, not under, because they don't think it's a penalty to take another course. So you got all set up to go, and then they tell you you're half a credit shy. So make sure you're a little bit over, or make sure you've got everything you want. And usually that works out well. And if you had a cross discipline in business and then go into accounting, it's fine. But if you were in something else like biology or you were a math teacher, you could end up shy on the business classes. So feel free to take other things you like. Also, it's very good if you've taken things like the forensic accounting class, or you take more of the data structures and things, because when you do interview for different jobs, you have something to talk about. And if you come in and say, oh, I love my audit class, they won't believe you. You just won't. You say, I love my forensic accounting class, and we talked about fraud, they'll talk with you and they think you're cool, but it's just not cool. It's just like saying, oh, I love tax. They don't quite believe you because you don't know what you're talking about, because you haven't taken the job. So as I said, be careful when you're trying to get the jobs, or for those of you who are trying to get new jobs in the industry, don't currently have one. But it's wide open, it's a growth field, we're gonna need CPAs. CPAs are leaving faster than ever. And we need diversity. We are one of the least diverse professions, mainly because you became a CPA because your dad was a CPA. And I know my dad's a CPA, and we have my great grandfather's trust books from 1900, where they did all those things. So there's a lot of in there. And the highest subgroup in accounting is Scottish. So when you go through, that's not a lot of diversity. And so we are opening up, trying to get other people in, and there are scholarships and opportunities all over the place and everywhere. It's just mainly everybody hired everyone's children. Now, in this last round, everybody told their kids not to be one. So now we have a big pool. So everybody's invited in, it will feed you, it's a good job, you can do anything with it once you get the CPA. Remember, 80% that go in, do audit, 80% leave audit. They never audit again. They've done it once, they don't need to do it anymore. But those of you who go in, we're gonna need you. And the tools are cool, the new stuff to do, the new way to audit. It's the forensically search. You'll like it, it's a lot of fun. So we do need all of you. And there are jobs, so that's why you want to do. Any other questions? No?
Not right now, but earlier, and I don't know if you know all the details, Amanda, about this. Somebody was asking, since now Wiley is with Roger, any chance that we get Roger in the prep course?
Yes, yes. So right now they're just doing that transition period as well on their end. So yes, you'll have access to it. So if you already purchased Wiley, you'll have access to Roger. Yeah.
So yes, because UWorld has acquired Wiley, right?
Yes,
So
correct.
we're working directly with UWorld. We continue to offer a discount for our
Yes,
students,
correct.
correct?
Correct.
And then we partner with them to where you can take the test until you pass.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And UWorld also has counselors that you can reach out to. So if you have questions about the prep exam, you can also reach out to them as well.
And UWorld just hired one of Becker's most popular review course instructors, Peter Olinto. So it's an interesting time in CPA review, things I never thought I would see. Those two, I can't even imagine them together. They're quite entertaining.
As I said, if you're scared by the government, they will pull in the stuff you do. Yeah, so they will teach you what you missed or you slept through or was missing. You can get it on.
Was there any
And
more?
they teach you fun accounting jokes? Like I remember Roger saying, what's the difference between bonds and your boyfriend? Bonds eventually mature. So it's just like silly stuff, but when you're at like hour 6 of studying this stuff, you need some jokes, you need some levity. Or what's really pertinent to this conversation, Roger said, the CPA exam is not a test of intellect, it's a test of discipline. And I think that's certainly true, right?
So it just means you knew a lot of things at one point. Whether you carry them with you or not, as they said, a lot of people did audit, they wanted to forget all of their tax. And, you know, the tax unfortunately doesn't get a forget audit, because we always have to start with audit and financial. So, it's a little bit.
JR is saying that he remembers that. Peter and Roger made the review course earlier. There's another question here in the Q&A, and it's, does UCSD Extended Studies or the accounting department have any career resources to help us work on locating employment opportunities? And I can
Yeah, you
answer
can,
the
yeah, go
question
ahead.
if you'd like. Yes, we do. We have a career counselor that works with business programs here at UCSD Extended Studies. The career coach works with the students who graduate from our certificate program and who are our students, and helps with first, creating an online presence, reviewing your LinkedIn page, going through your, working on your resume, getting you ready for employment, and, with coaching sessions. Then this person, who's also generally very well connected with the community, also shares all the job opportunities in our private LinkedIn group that we share with all our students. And so if opportunities come, you'd be the first to know. You should know that actually many employers in the community, because we have been around for a very long time, since 1966, many employers in the community come directly to us because they value the extended studies certificates and the preparation that the students get. And so once we get those notices and posts, we will share them with our students as soon as we can. And then if the person, the career coach has some direct connections with a special firm that, that you'd like to set up an informational interview with or something like that, they can help you with that. Full disclosure, at this point in time, the career coach, she left her position. She was amazing. She was tapped to become the director of career services on campus. So we are right now hiring for the position. It's vacant, but we hope to have it filled as soon as possible.
Well, the other thing I would just say is, what Amber said before, is to absolutely join Cal CPAs. Free student membership, they have events, right now, you can sign up to go to the ballpark with them. They're all going to the ballpark. Go meet the other CPAs. We don't get out much. We hire people we know. If they know you, they'll hire you. It's really that simple. You got the right skill set, you can get hired, especially with the season coming up. So you need to get that experience. It's not that hard to get the experience. You just have to meet the people. And the best place is, the most gregarious ones are at Cal CPA. So
We have a question here. Can you please repeat the group name?
it's California Society of CPA, and everybody calls it Cal CPA.
Cal
CAL.
CPA is.
CAL CPA, and there's a local group, but you can go to the website. It's calcpa.org, and you can sign up as a student for free. And then they will send you all the emails of all the local events. They have the ones with young CPAs where you can meet other people in the firm, you can go around, you can meet all the different people. And you can go to their events, and they'll have a county day, which, you see it once a year, where you can go down, you can meet all the different firms. There's a lot of different.
Yes, are we sponsoring accounting day this year?
Yes, we're working on that, yeah.
Okay.
And that'd be in May.
Yeah.
Usually it's
So
held in May.
please stay tuned. We are usually big sponsors of Accounting Day. We're here to help you and connect you. Another question is, how do we reach out to the career counselor? And to clarify, do we work with them after we complete our certificate program? Yes, at this point in time, I would be sharing the contact information with the counselor with you. As I said, we don't have one on staff at this very moment, but we are interviewing right now. So hopefully, we'll have somebody on board soon. For students, you generally start working with the counselor after you complete your certificate. But you can also, it's good to start a connection right away with the counselor. So we will get you in touch with this person as soon as we have one available, if you are already in the program.
I would add a nuance to that. This kind of comes from my experience because I was a campus recruiter for a number of years, interviewing students. So many of the firms, and I get it, this is like a certificate program, and so it doesn't line up with like a traditional 5-year program, but many of the firms do things like leadership, events, which is we're recruiting you when you're a sophomore. And then those leadership events turn into offers for their internship, and internship turns into offers for full-time. And so to their credit, Cal CPA has done a lot in terms of, and this is actually something I can help you with, Amanda, maybe, is that they've gone to the junior colleges with an event specifically around transitioning and getting into that pipeline process sooner, because the big four are recruiting people as sophomores. And so if you're waiting till the end of the certificate program to like get in touch with them, it's harder to break in. You want to kind of do that sooner with those larger firm environments. So that's where I would say, well, Amanda, let me try and help you with that and maybe get Cal CPA in here sooner, do an event, because you could really helps like if you have people in a firm to mentor someone and know when, but then back to the really getting involved with Cal CPA. Because the people that are going to the Cal CPA events, they know like what's going on in their firms and the hiring timelines. And I echo,
hire people they
hire people they know, and that like people that go to Cal CPA and AICPA events are like the go-getters and they want to help, right? Like people who work in public accounting or even industry jobs, they want to help the public. That's what being like, that's like the whole reason we have this license and rigor is we're protecting the public in the scope of financial services.
And a lot of the students will oftentimes volunteer, they'll set up the event, they'll be there, they'll meet all the CPAs, right? And they always need volunteers and, it's a good way to meet everybody.
But it's in the DNA, I feel like, of the senior CPAs to be like, I'll help you. How can I help you? Like, they're just very open and willing to help. So if you're like, is your firm hiring? They'll give you the information right there. So if you can do things like going to Petco Park where they're going to be having a couple beers and they get the spot that's open, I'm like, man, I gotta go to that event. I haven't been in a while. It's fun, but they're just genuinely nice, fun people. Like,
But
I have
if they're
good
not
friends
there
here.
too, they'll know who is.
Yeah,
And they may know other people in there because it's a very small community.
yeah.
And they'll help pass it along. And even if you wanted to go somewhere else, they may know people elsewhere in the thing that are looking. So as I said, it's not as bad right now as it's been in the past. But Cal Society is a great place for you to start.
Maria, was there any more questions?
No,
Okay.
no more questions in the chat.
All right. Well, I am also going to mention just one more detail before we end the event. We are also offering new discipline courses. We have courses for the information systems and controls discipline. We have a new audit and risk governance course and also information systems auditing. So if you're interested in those, I do want to mention that we are adding more courses to the discipline areas. They are not part of the accounting certificate, but we are offering them in support of the disciplines.
And as we said, don't be half the credit short. It happens a lot.
Yeah, I would invite everybody to go and check out the website, Extended Studies Accounting Program. There's a whole list of additional courses that are not part of the certificate, but are recommended. And we do know for a fact, I know, the board does not pre-approve them, but we do know that students who have taken the courses have had it approved. So that's how we know that they work.
All right, well, that concludes our event. Thank you for joining us virtually and in person. Joe, a big thank you, and to our panelists. And Joe, the reason why I say a big thank you to Joe is because he's joining us from the East Coast and it's really late for him. So
Thanks for having me.
thank you. Yeah, and yeah, thank you everybody for joining. If you have any questions, you can reach us at accountingtaxprogram@ucsd.edu.